First off, I kind of wanted to show you guys the 3 different stages of the glazes. So this was the glaze that distance learners got in their little kits. And you can see that that looks red, but it's also kind of pink. So when I put this on my piece and it dries, it's going to be even lighter. So it's a very pale pink. Okay, very, very pale. The bottom is not painted, so my rim is clean and free of any paint. And then once this is fired, so I put this through the kiln, it comes out a nice red, nice solid red. Okay, so that's the process. So the paint looks a little bit darker. As it dries, it's going to be lighter. And then the firing process after it comes out, that second firing. Okay, so that's just something I wanted to show you guys. It just looks a little bit different through each of the steps. All right, I am not using red today, so I am going to move this over. Just wanted to show you that. So this is the piece that I'm going to be painting today. And I'm going to start with giving it a sponge bath. So I'm going to just tap my sponge in water. And remember, it doesn't need to be soaking. It just needs to be damp. And I am just going to kind of swipe my sponge through my piece. Now I want to make sure I do the outside and the inside as well, because we will be painting the inside of these too. I got some clay dust in here. You might notice some white debris. That's okay. It happens. All right, so gave it its sponge bath. It's looking pretty clean. It's like a little rubber ducky. Rubber ducky would be great. So I am going to paint my moon yellow. I am starting with my lighter color first. If you have small sections and they're lighter colors, I highly recommend painting those first. Now with my background, maybe I switched the colors. Say I did the moon blue and the background yellow, I would still do yellow first. Okay, always do your light colors first. But since I'm doing the moon yellow, I'm gonna do the moon first. Okay, the background of this one's gonna end up being a blue. It's gonna actually look like a dark purple first. So I'm gonna get my brush and I'm just gonna mix my paint. It's kind of thick, a little bit, and that's good. That's what I want. I don't want it to be like super runny. It should stay on the brush. All right, so since I'm painting the moon first, I can use the edge of my cup to kind of wipe off some of that extra paint that I might not need. Okay. And then I'm just gonna start kind of using the brush in a back and forth motion to cover up my moon. Now this is such a small area, it paints pretty fast, right? But since it's 3D and it has some dimension to it, I'm gonna want to try and get the edges. Now if you feel like the paint's not applying, then you need to load your paintbrush up again. So I just loaded it up with paint and you'll just go over it again. Now I got a little bit of yellow on the background. That is a-okay, because since I'm painting my lighter color first, my darker color can cover that. So I'm really making sure I get along that edge. And you're gonna wanna take your time, don't rush through this. If you feel like it's really thick, you can always go across and kind of use that paint as well. All right, so I kind of did 2 coats already on that, so I want to let that dry. And the only reason why I say I kind of did 2 coats was because I was doing the edges and the paint kind of overlapped. But this doesn't take long to dry at all, so don't feel like pressured to get it like super dry or like rush through this. I can't blow on it. You can blow on it to let it dry. Now let's pretend I did all 3 coats. Let's pretend I did all 3 coats. Now I'm going to do my sponge coat. So I'm going to take my sponge. I'm just going to gently tap it into my glaze. And I'm just going to wipe a little bit of it off. I don't need it. I don't need a lot. So I'm going to take this and I'm just going to gently tap the front area. Remember, it should be dry when you are doing your next layer and your sponge layers. And you can kind of press to get around in the edges a little bit. I'm kind of using my fingers to guide my sponge just a little bit more. And then you can see in some areas where I got the yellow down here. Might be a little hard to see, but my darker color is going to cover that. So I'm going to let that dry, and then I am going to use, I'm going to start with my darker color. So this other glaze that I have is a specialty glaze. It has speckles in it. I like it because it has just a bigger contrast than the yellow, and you're going to be able to see me apply it a little bit better than the yellow. So I'm going to do the same exact steps. I'm going to want to be careful though of my moon because I don't want any paint on that moon. I'm going to move my yellow out of the way. All right. And then I'm actually going to get a little bit of a bigger brush for this one. And I'm going to load up my brush pretty heavily because this is a bit of a thicker paint. And then I'm just going to gently kind of start going around my moon. Now, I don't want to get any of this color on the yellow because then my moon won't be purely yellow. It will be a different color. So really take your time when you are applying your darker colors so you're not getting little imperfect lines or spots. If your paint's doing that, okay, you're getting brush streaks, you need to load your paintbrush up with more glaze, and then you need to keep applying it. You can do back and forth motions. You have paint on both sides of your brushes. And I'm making sure I'm not painting the very bottom where it's going to touch on the table. Your guys' mugs are pretty flat, so you're not going to really have to worry about this. Now, here I left my white spot. I didn't feel comfortable with this really big brush getting in there, so I'm going to grab a smaller brush and I'm going to try and get into my little nooks and crannies. So for my distance learners, I gave you 2 brushes. I gave you a small and a large. If I didn't, I'm sorry. You can come pick up one if you need it. But use your smaller brushes to get in those nooks and crannies so it looks nice. So then I just have my moon. I have a little bit of a speck on the side. I'm just going to try and scratch that off with my nail. And it came right off. So if you do have a spot in an area, you can scratch it off. Just be mindful, you might still get a little bit of residue here and there. Okay, so I would need to finish doing this, of course. But now that I have my little area my little area covered, I can go around the rest of it and apply the paint. So if you're covering up a large area, it's pretty basic. Do your 3 coats, do your sponge coat, make it nice and smooth. If you have a lot of details and design in it, it's gonna take you a little bit more time to get it done nicely, which is okay because I'm giving you plenty of time to get these glazed in a nice way, giving you about 2.5 weeks to get it done. And I'm making sure I can do the bottom right here because that isn't going to touch the table, but I'm just not going to do my little feetsies. Okay. All right. And then I'm going to let that dry, and then I will do my sponge coat over that as well, so it's nice and even for myself. Does anybody have any questions?